And it's great to have you join us in another edition of your favorite weekend business program on Channel Television. Capital Market is the first one for the month of May. I'm Ladi Williams. Let's begin the show with a quick review of major global stock markets performance at the end of the week, starting with major bosses around the globe. They're ending the weekly trade positive as traders focus their attention on the latest jobs report from the United States. That was on Friday, as well as corporate earnings results releases. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average ended the day with a more than 1% gain. The Nasdaq Composite was higher by 1.26%, while the S&P 500 gained the most among the three averages, up nearly 2%. And in Europe, Germany's DAX led the gains with a 0.59% increase on its index. France's CAC index followed closely, while the UK's FTSE 100 index ended the day with a 0.51% advance. Meanwhile, across the Asia-Pacific, it's a slightly mixed close. Japan's Nikkei 225 was down 0.10% on Friday, with the Japanese yen still in focus as it strengthened to 153.13 against the US dollar amid suspected government interventions on Monday and Wednesday. Elsewhere in Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gained 1.48%, while China's Shanghai Composite Index lost about 0.26% on Friday. And back here in Nigeria, the NASD OTC securities markets performance ended the week in the green as the index jumped by 0.64% week to date, while the market's overall value was up by 0.66%. However, the volume of securities traded this week fell by 91.99% to 288,991 units. Value traded dropped by 42.35%, while the number of deals carried out fell by 51.16%. Top advances for the week, Central Securities Clearing System and Ardor Holdings, which also emerged as the most traded securities, as well as Afriland Properties, while the duo of Franklin Campina and Food Concepts were the top decliners for the week. All right, now let's get a sense of how the unlisted market fared in the first quarter of 2024 and what an increase in minimum wage for workers in Nigeria will mean for Nigeria's capital market. Join us now is Mr. Longe Ewaride, Managing Director, NASD OTC Exchange, joining me right here in the studio. Good evening.
Good evening, Ladi.
Yes, and quite an eventful week. It's been about minimum wage. We're expecting a number on May 1st, but we're seeing negotiations stalling at this point. But you know, we're going through a cost of living crisis right now, and definitely, I'm sure retail is heavily heavily impacted, you know, at this time. Inflation is high. The fuel queues are back again. Talk to me about how retail is faring in Nigeria's capital market at this time.
Well, I think that the retail investors are finding a way to put some money aside a bit. You know, not everybody is impacted the same way. And people know that they must live, and they must live today and tomorrow. So they must put money aside. I mean, school fees will soon come at some point. There are other growth activities that the family must get involved with. You know, so there are investments being made. You can see the capital market. It isn't only being driven by the institutional investors. I think the retail investors are also putting a look in. And of course, you speak about you report on the crypto markets during the week, and you can see that those markets are heavily driven by Nigerian investors. You know, so people are finding a way.
People are finding a way somehow to put money aside to turn maybe 1 naira into 5 naira.
Exactly.
Hopefully, even though some people are really hungry.
Oh yes, I
mean, right now it's a huge squeeze on disposable income.
So I think that the country is experiencing a lot of pressure, and I think that I think the economy is kind of overheated. You know, so perhaps we need to take a step back and recalibrate. We need to sequence things a bit more. I mean, if you look at the capital market today, I think that there's going to be so much of a congestion on banking recapitalization. How is that going to fare? You know, where's the money going to come from? What do we need to do to expand our economic environment? The fiscal area is not really faring too well. There isn't anything new in the fiscal area, in my view, but we need to do something. I mean, there has to be industrialization. We must pay attention to that. What new area are we creating? Have we expanded the utilization of gas to be able to generate a lot of activities around the economy? Um, just this week, it occurred to me that we haven't taken cognizance of a few things that help to help industries grow. Take the concept of foundries, for instance. If you look across the globe, the foundries are the base for industrialization. So Ajaokuta is a huge foundry. Um, what is the solution to Ajaokuta? I think that is really far-flung. But then there's small foundries. There's a foundry association, that helps to create the metal base that helps to build industries. We've never taken a look at that. I think in the capital market, we need to look at how we create new areas so that there can be expansion. What about exports? There's an interesting collaboration between a bank and the foremost educational institution that tries to educate people on how they can build an export business. Those are new things that need to be created. Those are new things that will impact on people's incomes. Some of those things need to be brought to the fore so that we can actually see something new happening in our economy. Our economy is tight.
Right. And if we're not so import dependent, then, a currency devaluation won't impact us so heavily.
This
this
currency business, I mean, it's not going to go away. I think that the government did what was required in the emergency room, but we need to cut back very quickly and see how we expand sustainably. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to serve as a catalyst to the real economy. I mean, and always that's my thrust.
Right. All right, let's look at the minimum wage issue. Definitely, yes. We've had economists talk about how a hike in minimum wage, impacts inflation, negatively raising inflation, even more. And there's also another school of thought that there's an impact, for the capital market. First of all, I want to get your expectations. Negotiations are stalling. We're supposed to hear the new number for May 1st, but that didn't come. What are you expecting, and how do you, if a hike, if we get an increase, a nice increase, for workers at this time, how do you see that impacting Nigeria's capital market?
Okay, so let us say that let us take this from the position that was expressed by Labour, 615,000 naira per month. That's not an outlandish expectation when you look at the cost of living, but it isn't affordable. I mean, I just relate to myself as the manager of a business. If you put the minimum wage at 615, where do you scale it up there from? So that's part of what I say about the overheated economy. We need to really sequence things a bit better. Where will the minimum wage be? It's not something that you pluck from the air. It's a negotiation, and there needs to be sincerity, but definitely not where it is currently. The way most people have dealt with this is to have flexi work time. We've also done some kind of food bank arrangements, to reduce workers' pressure, and then maybe transport subsidies and things like that. But when you're looking for, the minimum wage has to be dealt with. But beyond the minimum wage is also the productivity gains. We can't look at minimum wage without productivity gains, because you soon get to the point where the economy is overheated again. So I think when we're speaking of minimum wage, we should also be looking at where we would make productivity gains. And there's this dreaded question about the optimal size of the civil service. It's an area that when we're thinking about how to remunerate workers adequately, we also need to look and see this is also part of productivity. How productive is the civil service? What's the size? What size should we have? What should we be driving as far as deliverables are concerned? Um, without really taking a proper analysis of how we would get the civil service to be productive, it's a myth, it's a mirage to be able to see productivity, because it is the civil servants that are going to be the connectors of change in this economy. So it's not the politicians, it's not the president. The president will say a few things, he will make bold remarks, but then how will those bold remarks get up and walk? Through the civil service.
Right.
So we need to focus on that and see how that drives. So I don't know whether I've said anything. I think minimum wage is important, but I think more than anything else, it ought to be balanced with productivity gains.
Right. And if we get, a nice pay rise at this point, do you think workers would be inclined to invest more, or would they just spend it all on, consumption? What do you think?
So so I run a capital markets platform, and I'd like to see people invest more, but I'd like more for people to invest in what creates a multiplier effect. So yes, I think that we're going to have to get people through the door, and that's what we are focused on with our platform. We think that there need to be growth businesses that succeed and become sustainable. I think that's where investing will count. If it is just investing to create more naira, that's good. There's nothing wrong with a little more money in your pocket. But you also want to see the environment grow. You want to see the schools grow. You want to see, we want to see logistics become more logical, right? You want to also see food production in such a way that the prices become sustainable. You know, look, if you look at the poultry industry, for instance, the price of chicken has gone very high because
Right.
the inputs. What targets are we making to make maize perhaps to be self-sustaining in maize production? That can be a target for us, and there are many other things that we need to actually focus upon. But it's a challenge because everything is important all at the same time.
All at the same time. All right, you did mention the banks earlier and the recap, exercise we're all expecting at this time.
Yes.
And we've seen the banking stocks, a lot of sell-offs, with those with the banking stocks in April,
Yes.
and some parts of the first quarter. So we've seen some of these stocks. They were worth over 1 trillion,
Yes.
at one point, but we've seen them fall below that level. That's the likes of GTCO, Access Bank, and FBNH.
Yes.
What is this telling us?
Well, I don't think it's telling us too much other than return on investments, one, and then two, people are taking advantage of dividend payouts. So there's nothing esoteric about it. I think that the prices spiked because of the euphoria of trying to um, attain real return on investment, trying to beat inflation, and those were the more popular stocks. But with the declaration of dividends, people have cut back somewhat. But in the last few days, the reason for why the prices have dropped is because the dividends have been declared and they've been marked down, right? They've been marked down, and people are actually hunting for dividend across companies. So you mark down Zenith today and Guarantee Trust tomorrow, and you're positioning for UBA the next day. And after UBA, you're positioning for Fidelity Bank the next day. So that's what's happening in the banking system, But beyond that, you have to say to yourself, with all of these, I would say, movements in the sector, where is all of this going to land? How are they going to be able to raise the equity that is required for their businesses as the minimum capital has been prescribed for? So I think that would be somewhat of a challenge. But the Nigerian economy is not just financial services. So while I think that you make a good buck putting money in financial services, you also need to look at other areas of the economy that the capital market can propel.
Right. And definitely there are other sectors, at this point
Oh,
we're seeing
yes.
industrials and consumer goods, at
Yes.
this time. But we're going to drill down on the NASD exchange. We'll see some
Yes.
movements in the first quarter. Review that and
Yes.
get an outlook for the second quarter
Yes.
of 2024. Well, we'll continue the conversation right after the break. Do stay with us. This is Capital Market. Let's get a quick check on the equities market. Despite a holiday shortened week, the domestic stock market ended in the green, starting off the month of May with a 1.46% increase on the all-share index, while investors gained about 811 million naira in value. The rally in the market was largely attributed to gains recorded by bellwether equities such as FBNA, GTCO, UBA, MTN Nigeria would offset the losses in Seplat, Dangote Sugar, Nigerian Breweries, and Lafarge. Well, sectoral performance was mixed as the banking index recorded most significant weekly gain, followed by insurance, while the industrial and consumer goods, oil and gas ended the week in the red. Market breadth turned positive for the week as 42 equities gained, led by Evian Holdings, 36 equities lost their price value, led by Nasdq, while 76 other equities remained unchanged. A total turnover of 1.94 billion shares worth 32 billion naira were traded in 35,807 deals. All right, let's get back to the conversation now. I still have with me Mr. Olonge Ewaride, MD, NASD OTC Exchange. And we're reviewing important happenings in the markets this week. But let's look at the NASD market. We know April was quite tough for risk assets,
Yes.
even in the global space at this time. Talk to us about how the NASD market fared for investors.
So for the first quarter, just with all the other markets, there was significant growth. The quarter closed, well, let me say, not exactly significant, but positive. 11.6%, 12%, both on market capitalization and on the index as well. For value and volume, the value more than doubled. This is the euphoria of investing in equities in the period. But April has been a bit of a challenge, and I feel that for the NASD market, breadth, just like I've tried to say, is what we should be pursuing. We have a concentration of a few companies, and I think that's a concentration risk, so companies, when they feel bigger than our platform, decide to move on, so we need to replace those companies. And for us, just like with the footballing style of the Brazilians, if you, at some points, I think they're more technical these days, if you score 4, they score 5.
Right.
So, we need to discover new companies. We need to set up the incubation, that drives discovery of new businesses. That's what drives an economy, So I recently came across a book by one of the former finance ministers of Nigeria, and also the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. And I see a lot of work that has been done in trying to diversify the Nigerian economy. People say the Nigerian economy is diversified because you have earnings from different places, but that's not true to a certain extent. You're thinking about what could drive an economy, what new things are happening. The automotive industry policy, the industry revolution policy, the SME policies. So for us, what we think is that we should be the custodian of some of these thoughts that have been seeded, and try to bring them alive. We don't have to be too academic about it. We don't have to be abstract. We think that there should be smaller companies, I would call them growth companies, that we can actually engage with and serve as the plug for the missing middle, so that they can access capital and become bigger companies. I think we will contribute to growth significantly that way.
And definitely we have bigger companies and the government can get, good taxes,
Yes,
from,
I mean,
most of these
so
companies.
exactly. So we need to have somewhat of a line of sight to those companies so that as they become bigger, they become PLCs, they contribute to the economy.
Right. And talking about listings and, the listings at this time, we've seen the likes of MRS actually,
Yes.
request to be delisted from the NGX and
Yes.
actually list on the NASD.
Not necessarily. If they remain a public company, yes, they would have to trade, the investors will have to trade their shares on NASD. But it isn't automatic. If the company may have decided to pull out because they want to become a private company. If they become a private company, there's no compulsion for them to be admitted onto the NASD. But if they do remain a public company, they have to have the investors have to have their shares traded on a licensed exchange. Unfortunately for us, we're the only equities OTC market currently. So yes, they have to do that.
Right. And, last time we were on the show, we've talked about, technology and, the plans you have for the NASD when it comes to, operations and
Yes.
technology and all of that. Talk
Yes.
to me about what's happened so far.
Yes, so we did have we did think that by the first quarter of this year, our blockchain digital securities platform would have become operational. But we didn't. We underestimated the preparation required to be able to get there. But we're set to go. And I think that's the theme of the conversation around the capital market. Digitalize your processes. I think we've already put ourselves forward as far as that is concerned. We're trying to attract companies onto that platform, and the advantage of that platform is not very far-flung in thinking. So it's actually fractionalization, speaking to the retail markets. The easier way to onboard companies onto a market, right? So think about it as it's like a new engine for an old model equipment, So you don't have to carry papers all around trying to file things, You can actually do all your filing and information communication on a platform. And then you are able to onboard complex transactions by tokenizing them. And tokenizing is a big word. All you're doing is that you get maybe, say, the Lagos Blue Rail and Red Line, and government says, I want to raise capital and I'm willing to sell this to retail investors. We can create tokens behind the earnings of those companies and sell to investors. Then the other side is that the platform is borderless and it can trade for 24 hours. So it's not crypto, it's not anything
It'd be quite incredible seeing traditional assets trade for 24 hours.
It's not technologically sexy like people would think, but it is actually going to bring something new because we think that some of those assets can grow significantly, right? And then they actually have an impact on the economy. That's what we're trying to do with the digital securities platform.
All right, what are you seeing for the second quarter of 2024 for the exchange?
Yeah, so we think that we would consolidate some of the growth that we're seeing. We're going to lose some and gain a lot. Some companies have indicated to move on, and we've braced ourselves up for that. It's going to be a sad loss, but what we've thought is that the NASD is actually an incubation platform for now, So we, just like you sell players to bigger teams, we can find a lot of diamonds in the rough, pump them up, and then we'll see we make them beautiful brides for either our own platform or for other platforms.
Fantastic. And we'll see a domino effect.
Exactly. And help to impact the economy.
Fantastic.
That's what we're trying to do in the quarter ahead.
Right. We'll definitely be looking out for all of that. Thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. As always, Mr. Longe Evaride, who's the MD, NASD OTC Exchange. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, now let's get you some outlook for next week. Now, we'll see the central bank settled to hold Treasury bills primary market auction on Wednesday, that's May 8th, with 179.36 billion naira worth of maturities on offer. At the money market, traders expect the overnight rate to climb a notch higher amid possible debits for net NTB issuances on Wednesday's auction, barring any significant liquidity influx into the financial system. That's for next week. Over to the Treasury bills market. Northward movement in yields in the Treasury bill secondary market is anticipated as demand for instruments moderate, and this follows expectations of likely liquidity deficit, and that's in the coming week. At the bonds market, players in bond secondary market expect to continue to reshuffle their holdings in preparation for this month's FGN bond auction, scheduled to hold May 13th. And at the equities market, investors expect to adjust portfolios amid the Q1 2024 corporate earnings report releases. And that's the show for this weekend. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. From me and the team right here at Channels HQ, it's bye for now.